Drug cartels' cruelty knows no bounds, sparing no one who crosses their path. Regardless of age, gender, or innocence, these ruthless groups are always ready to unleash unimaginable violence. Their methods of punishment are among the most brutal and inhumane. Today, we will dive into the harrowing stories of 4 women who suffered an unfathomable fate at the hands of these merciless cartels. What they endured shocks everyone who hears their stories. Number 4. Jocelyn Alejandro Niño, known in the ruthless world of Mexican cartels as La Flaca, met a tragic end at the hands of a rival gang. Before her brutal death, she was a hitwoman for the Gulf Cartel, a notorious crime group based in Tamaulipas, Mexico. La Flaca, which means the skinny one, first caught the internet's attention in a viral video where she was seen handling a modified M4 assault rifle, smiling innocently. This image was a stark contrast to the grim realities of her life, depicted against the modest background of her room, highlighting the jarring disconnect between her youthful appearance and the violent world she inhabited. La Flaca's downfall began when her photo, identifying her as a member of the Gulf Cartel's Rio Bravo faction called Los Ciclones, was leaked online by their rivals, Los Metros. This marked her as a key target in their brutal turf war. In what appeared to be a strategic but fatal decision by Ciclone 7, the leader of Los Ciclones, she was sent right into the heart of enemy territory in Rio Bravo, a move that virtually sealed her fate, as if she had been deliberately sacrificed following her exposure. On April 13, 2015, the brutal consequences of this gang rivalry were shockingly revealed when police found La Flaca's dismembered body in a freezer, scattered across a parking lot in Tamaulipas. Further searches led to more of her remains hidden in plastic bags. The only way to identify her was through a distinctive tattoo with her last name Niño, which poignantly means child in Spanish. This detail highlighted the cruel irony of her life and death. Despite being in her late teens or early 20s, she was engulfed by a world of violence far beyond her years. In her last moments, La Flaca faced a brutal interrogation by Los Metros, enduring horrors that are difficult to fathom. The gruesome display of her fragmented body was posted online by Los Metros with a cold warning. This will happen to all the filthy who support Los Ciclones. Keep sending. This chilling message underscored the harsh reality of cartel vendettas, marking a somber chapter in the saga of cartel violence. Number 3. A 6-year-old girl. 2015. A horrifying event occurred that shook the media to its core. A 6-year-old girl was brutally murdered in a way that highlighted the ruthless nature of drug cartels. Her innocence made the manner of her death even more shocking. She was executed with an axe right in front of her parents. A gruesome scene meant to terrorize them forever. But the horror didn't stop there. The killer, after taking her life, gruesomely chopped off her limbs and callously burned them in a barrel. This act of unimaginable cruelty was carried out by Marciano Milan Vasquez, a feared leader within the notorious Mexican drug cartel Los Zetas. Another witness, a 39-year-old man who had lost a shipment belonging to the cartel, was also forced to watch. It was a twisted message from Vasquez: find the missing shipment or suffer a fate as horrific, if not worse. According to the witness, the girl was still alive when Vasquez began to dismember her screams echoing as he laughed cruelly. After this barbaric act, he mercilessly killed her parents as well. Vasquez was more than just a foot soldier. He climbed the ranks to become a regional boss in Piedras Negras, a city plagued by violence and smuggling. He ruled with a heavy hand, engaging in drug trafficking, bribery, and forming strategic ties within the cartel. His criminal activities weren't limited to murder. They also included drug and weapon trafficking, and even human trafficking, exploiting minors for profit. One of his most notorious acts involved a mass tragedy in Coahuila, where 300 people were abducted and savagely murdered. The methods of disposing the bodies were horrifying. Some were cooked, others dissolved in acid or burned with diesel. It's believed that Vasquez directly participated in the murders of at least 29 people from 2009 to 2015. After a raid on a Los Zetas camp, authorities described a haunting scene. Walls covered with bloody handprints, clothing stained with human remains, cable ties, and machetes, tools used for torture and murder. Under a layer of ash, they found bones that crunched underfoot, a vivid reminder of relentless cruelty. Los Zetas started in 1997 as the violent arm of the Gulf Cartel. It was founded by Ociel Cardenas Guillen and militarized by a retired Army Lieutenant, Arturo Guzman de Sena, who recruited violent deserters from military special forces. Known by his former radio code Z1, Guzman de Sena introduced a level of violence that changed how cartels battled. What used to be gang fights with pistols and knives turned into heavily armed clashes, more like what you'd see in a war. The bloody story of Los Zetas reached its height when they became Mexico's largest cartel by territory, even outdoing the infamous Sinaloa cartel. But their rule was marked by chaos, not order, a reckless strategy that eventually led to their downfall as smarter cartels broke their power. The tragic death of a young girl at their hands remains a stark reminder of their cruel legacy, a legacy that turned Acapulco into the murder capital of Mexico and redefined the brutality of cartel warfare. Number 2. Gabriela Lima Santana. On what started as an ordinary day on March 24, 2021, in the south of Brazil, city workers were clearing out a drainage ditch, but the day quickly turned nightmarish when an excavator, sorting through the trash, accidentally tossed what looked like a human arm into the water below. The crew, stunned and horrified, watched the arm eerily float on the surface. This grim find turned out to be the remains of 21-year-old Gabriela Lima Santana, who had been reported missing. Tattoos linked her to a local gang, and DNA tests confirmed it was her. Investigators found her body parts packed inside a black suitcase amid everyday trash. The story that unfolded was chilling. Gabriela had been savagely killed by a rival gang. Her body was cut up using kitchen knives and a saw found at the scene, likely to make identifying her more difficult. The killers had tried to weigh down the suitcase with her remains in the ditch, but it didn't stay submerged. Her death came just a day before her birthday on March 13th, marking a tragic end to her life amidst gang violence. As detectives dug deeper, they discovered a video that recorded this brutal killing. Shockingly, their footage showed the murderer smiling as he committed the act, a stark and horrifying contrast to the gruesome scene. This video linked directly to Gabriela's death and pushed the police into high gear, leading them to an apartment in Rio Branco. There, they arrested a 23-year-old suspected of filming the murder and a 49-year-old who appeared in the video, both believed to be directly involved in the crime. The suspects were thought to be part of notorious gangs like Comando Vermelho or the First Capital Command, groups known for their harsh methods in Brazil. These gangs originated in 1979 from an alliance among prisoners and radicals, initially banding together to protect themselves from harsh prison conditions, but eventually turning into powerful cartels known for their brutal control and retaliation. Despite efforts by prison authorities to break up this alliance by moving leaders around to different parts of the prison, it has only made their influence stronger and more widespread. As the years went by, the Comando Vermelho, also known as CV, grew into one of Brazil's most feared criminal organizations. They're involved in everything from drug and arms trafficking to loan sharking, extortion, and even narco-terrorism. They're especially known for hijacking armored trucks and pulling off high-stake kidnappings. Today, the CV claims to have over 30,000 members spread across Brazil. Another brutal group possibly linked to the murder of Gabriela Santana is the First Capital Command, or PCC. Like the CV, the PCC started in a notorious prison, São Paulo's Carandiru, after a violent riot there in which over 100 prisoners were killed by security forces. This tragic event spurred the inmates to form what has now become a gang with about 20,000 members, many of whom are still behind bars. A particularly violent episode in 2012 between the PCC and the police left over 100 people dead and led to the resignation of São Paulo's public security secretary following a broken truce. That same year, the national government labeled the PCC as Brazil's biggest criminal group. While investigations continue, it is still not clear which gang was directly responsible for Santana's brutal killing. Number 1. La Guerra Loca. La Guerra Loca's story is chillingly similar to that of La Flaca, another female hitwoman within the violent depths of the Gulf Cartel. Both women earned fearsome reputations as ruthless killers, mastering the brutal tactics of cartel warfare. Sadly, their ends were as violent as the lives they led. La Guerra Loca was gruesomely dismembered alongside her team, just like La Flaca and her accomplices. Known by her menacing nickname, Yesenia Pacheco Ramirez climbed the ranks to become a top executioner for the Gulf Cartel, marking a dark turn in how these criminal networks recruit women for frontline roles. Cartels often target women from poor backgrounds, drawing them into the grim world of nighttime crimes and deadly missions for little pay, all while the cartel bosses stay safely hidden. This recruitment strategy is also applied to young men, tempted by the allure of quick cash and respect, only to find themselves trapped in a relentless cycle of violence, transforming them into seasoned killers. As one of the most formidable female figures in the cartel scene, La Guerra Loca dealt with her targets with terrifying intensity, earning her a reputation as a major threat by police across Mexico. Recruited by the Gulf Cartel in 2009, she spread fear throughout Tamaulipas, becoming infamous for her savage way of dismembering enemies while they were still alive. Leading a team known as Las Hienas, made up entirely of women, La Guerra Loca broke new ground in the male-dominated cartel hierarchy. Her team was crucial in gathering intelligence and keeping an eye on rival cartels, especially during the fierce split between the Gulf Cartel and Los Zetas. Her brutal tactics instilled such terror that they even made Los Zetas members desert their positions to escape her wrath. One of her most notorious acts was skinning a Los Zetas soldier's face, a gruesome act that not only increased her infamy, but also cemented her place on Mexico's most wanted list, highlighting her extraordinary and fearsome role in the cartel's brutal history. However, Yesenia's rule in the criminal underworld was brutally cut short. By July 2014, the same violence she wielded came back to haunt her with the gruesome discovery of her mutilated body. It was clear that the Zetas had taken their revenge. Driven by a desire for retribution, they wouldn't stop until she was dead. Her final days were marked by extreme brutality. Captured with 3 of her team members, La Guerra Loca endured merciless torture. A chilling video released by the Zetas cartel captured their grim end. In the footage, La Guerra Loca and her companions were executed by 3 masked assassins. Before their execution, they were forced into confessing their roles within the Gulf Cartel during a grim interrogation. The horror of what followed was indescribable, and their bodies were later found dumped at the execution site. The notorious feud between Los Zetas and the Gulf Cartel, which started in the late 1990s, led to increasingly barbaric acts of vengeance. Originally just enforcers for the Gulf Cartel, the Zetas' rise to power led them to break away and forge their own savage path. By 2010, they had established themselves as a formidable force, known for brutality that seemed straight out of a horror movie, especially against their former allies. In this brutal world of cartels, where payback is inevitable and every offense is repaid with violence, the cycle of brutality continues without end. It's a harsh reminder that in these battles, brutality doesn't discriminate by gender, it hits just as hard against women. Yet it's often the most vulnerable, particularly women and girls, who suffer the most in these ruthless conflicts. We must remember the lives tragically cut short and the many innocents caught in the crossfire of these senseless wars.